Okay, so I made these two documentaries called the Terry Fragments and June's Patchwork. Terry is a blind, sorry, he passed away last week, unfortunately. Yes, this came quite unexpected. He was a blind painter. June is a blind writer and historian. So before I talk more about the project rationale and the methodology, let me show you the trailer of the Terry Fragments. Sorry, I only have subtitles, no audio description for the clips. I apologize for that.
So I thought you stopped smoking.
I did.
So you started again.
Ah, because of you.
Because of me?
Aye.
The stress.
Continuity.
The stress of filming.
Mm. But that is coming away and that is coming away. Hey up.
Why is that?
Because then I was still learning about the technique. This is just some kind of weird poem. Whether it's got a moral or what, I've no idea.
What, read it?
Patricia, read it, please.
Oh, read it, yeah.
It's got a bit weird
Okay, I've
ending.
got it.
There we go.
What makes you light a cigarette then? Stress?
Stress of being blind every second, every minute, every hour, every day, every week, every month, every year. That kind of stress.
Can you remember strawberry ice cream?
Almost as pale as you can, because we know for a fact it'll dry darker.
How does it make you feel now to know that it's completed, it's framed?
Fine at last, got rid of a burden off me back.
So the rationale behind both of these films was to challenge stereotypes of blindness and disability in general. And the strategy is, as I said yesterday in my presentation, so first I had to identify the target audience, which in this case are the holders of stereotypes of blindness. Then identify the blindness stereotypes. So what are the stereotypes of blind people? And a lot of the stereotypes we talked about yesterday, the four stereotypes, if you remember, incapable, stereotype and so forth, are equal to blindness. So they are used for blindness as well. And then conceptualize ways of challenging stereotypes through narrative and aesthetic representations in my own film. So how do I use camera, editing, sound, color and so forth to break these stereotypes? Because as we said yesterday, representation is what creates the stereotypes and what keeps disseminating them. And then of course exhibiting my films to target audiences and monitoring the impact. That was, or is still part of it because it's work in progress. So when I looked at blindness stereotypes, as I just said, we have the same stereotypes as for disability in general, the incapable stereotype, the victimizing stereotype, the super crib, and what was the last one? Oh, the amoral stereotype. Yeah, I didn't think of that because I was looking mainly at documentaries. In documentaries, you very rarely see the amoral stereotype of blindness. But in fiction films, you do have amorality that is attached to blindness, which of course increases the stigma. One thing I want to mention that when it comes to blindness especially, because especially since Enlightenment in Europe and philosophers that put so much emphasis on vision, the fear of loss of vision has been really emphasized in all of these narratives. So these narratives evoke a really strong, through their narratives, representations, very strong feeling in sighted audiences that it's terrible to be blind, be afraid of being blind. So the emotion of fear. And interestingly, this campaign by the Royal National Institute of Blind People in the UK used this emotion of fear unintentionally. They wanted to raise awareness about support for visually impaired people in hospitals, and they came up with this campaign of famous people like Dame Shirley Bassey looking at the camera, closing her eyes and saying, if I couldn't see the people, I could not imagine myself singing. So if you can imagine, if a visually impaired person hears about this, it means that life is over when I'm blind. You can't work your passion when you're blind. It's a terrible life when you're blind. Needless to say, the disability community really criticized this campaign. It was taken off the internet quite soon. So the emotion of fear. Now when it comes to aesthetics, that's something that's often forgotten when it comes to representation. Very often stereotypes work through aesthetics, through the visuals. One particular feature of films about blindness is they have a lot of extreme close-ups, very detailed. They play around with experimentation of the image, they have the light-dark metaphor of seeing blindness, a metaphor. They always film people in close-ups, not always, but very often, close-ups like these. So what this does to a seeing audience, it expresses the experience of abnormality. Yeah, we don't see like this in real life. In real life, sighted people see maybe in a wide shot or medium shot, but not as close as this. But these films, using this film language, they create this abstraction of the character. They express abnormality, and spectacularization becomes a spectacle, basically. So this is something I try to avoid in my films. The main strategy I used from turning stereotypes, I talked yesterday, was perspective taking. So I wanted to create, through these documentaries, a feeling in the audience as if they had a similar experience to the blind people. In other words, evoking empathic reactions. So trying as much as possible to evoke empathy. Very important that empathy is not the same as sympathy. Empathy means that you have similar experiences as the other person. Sympathy means that you may feel sorry for them, like pity, so very, very different. One strategy for that was to focus on the ordinary everyday from the perspective of the blind people. There are a lot of disability scholars, you can see from the citations, that emphasize that disability is often not represented in an ordinary everyday way. And when these scholars say ordinary, what they mean is from the perspective of a blind person or a disabled person. So it's very rare, for example, to see blind people doing housework, go shopping, travel, doing everyday tasks. And as we saw in the Super Crib advert, the Paralympics advert yesterday, even basic tasks like having breakfast or holding a baby were glorified as being superhuman skills to have. And this is what documentaries often do. They use this Super Crib trope. So I wanted to keep it ordinary, everyday, from the perspective of the characters. And for that I used methods based on anthropology. For example, the focus on objects and materialities. In anthropology, objects and materialities are analyzed in relation to subjective experiences and how objects can mediate our experiences, our perspective, and how they can create empathy. For instance, I'm going to see if I can play a bit of that. I'm going to show you a clip where one of the characters talks about a war in her garden.
I just find it so amazing that something that big can stay on the water without sinking.
You should be able to hear it soon.
I really only notice it when it blocks the sun out. Most people just think of me as the lady who lives in Market Street who is blind and quite elderly, and they're not really sure what I do.
Up, window, 2, up.
When we first moved here, we knew that we had got a piece of the original medieval town wall in our garden, and I can imagine it when it was in its full size because of touching it and sitting close to it. I started my business in 1988, doing the training, and I'm recognised as an access auditor across Europe. Where am I? Oh yes, we've got to a cable row. Lots of people have said to me since my husband died, you know, well, now you're a widow, are you and David going to get married? And we said, well, we don't really need to because we're already committed.
So I used this wall in several scenes in the film to show her perspective of how she relates to that war. She sees it as a friend, as an inspiration, inspired her to write books about history, to become a historian. Another strategy for representing the everyday are repetitions. Yeah, so in several scenes she sits next to the war, she's doing similar things, but the war also changes throughout the film. And so at the beginning it's quite dilapidated, at the end it's refurbished. So you can see how she changes and her relationship to the war changes through these repetitions. The last strategy I want to mention for ordinariness or everyday are disruptions and improvisations, especially with artists and painters. Very rarely in documentaries you see that they are making mistakes, they have to improvise, something happens, something unpredicted. And by doing that, you can easily evoke the supercrip stereotype very, very easily. So I use several scenes where Terry, for instance, can't stick the plasticine here onto the board because it's too soft and it doesn't stick. Or it falls down, he has to put it back up. But I also want to show you something else. I want to show you him being disrupted by me. Yeah, so often in documentaries, the filmmakers that film the characters are not within the documentary, but I put myself in because I wanted to show how I disrupt his everyday. Obviously there's a big power imbalance between a seeing filmmaker filming a blind person, and that is acknowledged through these interactions. So I'm going to show you two brief clips to demonstrate that. So in this clip, I asked him, well, you will see, it's right before I started filming him painting the first time.
That's very nice.
I don't tell you, I haven't heard that before.
I have, but who was it? Who composed it?
Sati.
Okay.
Eric Azizil.
Right. Okay, so we can start, but can we turn off the music, please?
Why?
I can't have it in the background because of continuity.
What continuity?
Are you usually listening to music when you work or paint? Do you usually listen to music?
I don't have any music. No.
Okay, I'll explain why. When I edit,
So I have to turn the music off.
yes, please. When I edit the rushes together,
Wait a minute. Right, meanie. Explain.
when I edit the
Meanie.
when I edit the
Meanie.
when I edit the rushes, if I cut from one shot to another, the music will suddenly change and there will be a jump. So I need to make sure there's continuity. It's called continuity. So I need to make sure that there's no music in the background. And if I want the music, I can put it in post-production. So I'm sorry, we have to turn it off. So maybe you can imagine it whilst you work.
No, impossible.
Oh no, it's not the same, is it?
No, absolutely not. But there we are.
So
For art, you have to suffer.
we can blame continuity.
No, I'm blaming you. Continuity, Connie's got nothing to do with it.
Very, very briefly, the last clip is where I want to emphasize that blind characters don't see the cinematographer.
Can I move?
Oh, you were waiting for me, please. Go ahead. So I thought you stopped smoking.
I did.
So you started again.
Ah, because of you.
Because of me,
Aye.
the stress.
Continuity.
The stress of film.
Because you never have a cigarette in the day now.
No.
Just when we are here.
The harbinger of doom.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Where's that gone to?
Sorry, my mistake.
Where's it gone?
What are you looking for?
I don't know whether the end has come off or not.
It's not come off.
Oh,
Still
okay.
there. Sorry.
Putting out time.
Oh, I'm coming.
Well, I just leave it and it goes out itself.
Oh, that's so uncinematic.
Okay then. A bit of violence there. Strange. You're meant to enjoy a fag break. But here I am being harassed during a fag break. I'll have to have a fag break for the stress of this fag break. There you go.
Sorry to impose on your fag break.
Said with the sincerity of a cheap Christians.
Okay. Thank you very much for listening. I have to finish here.